Damian Lampkin, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm very good, mate. Thank you very much for having me here.
You seem to think it's a bit random me asking you to come on, really?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, but it's not every day you get invited to come onto a mate's podcast, is it? But and at the wicked Mahara Jiu-Jitsu, got to give you a plug. What a cool facility you've got here.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it?
Really cool.
Yeah, I still have to pinch myself coming down here sometimes, and one of the hardest things I've always found is, and probably the same with you, being self-employed and building the business. Any waste? There we go. Give it a plug.
There you go. Thank you very much.
But building your own business up is sometimes you have to just kind of stop and take note of what you've actually done and what you've achieved. And I think sometimes if you're not one of those self-reflective people, it's easy to go, I've done that, right, what's the next thing?
Having the time to pause and breathe is so important. Like you just said, I mean, I've been doing this for 25 years now, setting up, scaling up companies, and you get caught in the whirlwind of just going to the next problem, the next thing, because there's always a problem when you set up a business, whether it's an opportunity or a wall you've got to jump over. You've got to stop in between each one of those and appreciate, I've just jumped over a big wall here. I've done this. This is great. I've done this by myself and I've paid my bills. Absorb that, celebrate that, and then move on to the next thing.
Yeah, 100%. And those are the things that I struggle with the most. And even when I was in the Marines, it was one of those things that I organising events for thousands of people. You get it done, and then at the end of it, you're like, oh my God, thank God that's done. And then you put it all to bed, you put all the stuff away, and all the other people, the event disperses and it finishes, and then the next day you're back into the office just cracking on as normal. And I never really kind of paused and go, do you know what, we ran a fucking awesome event there.
Yeah.
All these people really enjoyed it. Had lots of really positive feedback, and they've asked us to do it again.
It's a cultural thing. I really believe it's a cultural thing. In the UK, we don't celebrate success, no matter how big or how small. We just get on, next thing, let's do it. Look at the Americans, for example. They'll be like, man, that's a really good job, well done. And then they actually actively celebrate someone being successful. Like with your business, setting up your business, as you start growing and as you start becoming more successful, more people want more from you. There's none of this celebratory encouragement driving. We were talking about this the other day in a group chat, one of our many jiu-jitsu group chats that we're part of, and it's a couple of local business people really should be shouted about for what they're doing. I think it was Akira at the time. I was saying, look, he's really doing this. He's really going for it. Let's jump behind him. And he messaged me. He said, it's a lonely place being in business by yourself. I know. He's only a young lad. He's in his 20s. I've been doing this nearly as long as he's been alive, and it's a lonely place to be. So the individual small business people, no matter what size you get to, should always support each other, and they should always help champion each other. That's
one of the things I struggle with the most, especially running my own gym, is that, we've talked about this before. I'm making enough now to cover the rent and actually making a little bit of money on top of it. And I think sometimes from a jiu-jitsu perspective, running a jiu-jitsu gym or academy, people talking about money is almost like one of those hidden things, I shouldn't talk about that. But if you're going to make something successful, you need to make some sort of profit out of it to make it better for the people that are turning up.
I totally get that. People hate the idea that you're making money out of their hobby. So years ago, 20 years ago now, I used to have a dive centre in Whitsand Bay, and divers would come from all over the country to dive on the Europe's first artificial reef. The Scylla was placed in Whitsand Bay, and we were the closest dive centre to it. I had a beach cafe. I was right time, right place, managed to get the finance together and just did it. I was 25, 26. And I love diving. The fact I got to buy a beach cafe at the same time was great. But everybody who came down, keep in mind, these people would spend £1,000 plus on their own kit. at least £1,000. Yet they wouldn't spend £25 to go out and dive on a boat that I have to fuel, I have to skipper, I have to maintain to MCA coding, and then take them 3 miles down the coast, dive, and bring them back again. They expected me to make the money just from the beach cafe. You've got to be able to make money. If you can't make money, your doors will close, and then they'll moan about they've got nowhere to train or nowhere to dive. So it's a real fine line to balance that. But I think people are getting better with it, especially with things like this, where it's not a high cost of entry like it is with diving. You've got to spend all the kit, do all the courses before you can go diving. Here you can rock up in a t-shirt and a pair of shorts, barefoot, and you can roll. So people are quite happy to spend a little bit. But again, everyone's on a budget at the moment, I guess. It's but being able to work with someone who's running the business and training in the business. I mean, you do this all yourself, right? You don't have hundreds of external coaches coming in to help you live, breathe, and operate this. You get injured, you can't earn money. It's a fine line.
Tell me about it. I bust my knee in October last year, and it was the last roll, and I basically tweaked my knee the wrong way when it was bent, and I got home. I was walking around on it absolutely fine, and then I woke up about midnight and I couldn't move my knee, and I was pretty much in tears, and I said to my missus, I was like, I'm fucked here, because I couldn't bend down, and I couldn't I wouldn't have been able to teach, because jiu-jitsu is a very active sport. Your body moves in lots of different directions, and to teach those moves and even to show them, you have to be able to have access to all your joints and stuff to work correctly. And it wasn't great. And then we did an open mat on the Sunday, and I opened up and the lads came and trained, and I was just moving about. And then the Monday I was doing closed guard escapes, and I managed to be able to sort of just about bend my knee. And that was it's always been one of my kind of fears. Like, I've been running Mahara Jiu-Jitsu now for 3 years, and it's always been like me coaching. I haven't got the level of students at the moment to be able to turn around and go, I can pay somebody to do it, or give somebody a free membership and they teach a couple of classes or whatever, or they might just do it off their own back. I don't know. I haven't worked that stuff out yet, but they haven't got to the level yet where I'm able to do that and kind of step back a touch. So everything has to be done by me. And it's quite daunting, and I have to very much tailor my training a little bit. But just like the chat about takedowns on the group chat.
The group chat on takedowns.
The group chat on takedowns is that if you hold back on certain things and you're not confident and you're not committed to what you're doing, you're more likely to get injured from the lack of commitment than you are just going for it.
I completely agree with that. I mean, I'm 46 now. I don't know. I don't look it.
I'm 44, mate, this year.
Neither of us look it. When we were younger and we were looking at 40-year-olds when we were in our 20s, they looked 40. We don't look 40, mate. We're floating around our 30s. It's all up there. But I a minor injury and I'm out for weeks. And knees are always the first one to go, especially when you get over 38. I don't know what it is. It's like a switch gets flipped and away, and that's it. But I helped teach with the Devon and Cornwall Police Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu team, and just getting out and about now, post-surgery, I went down to have a look, and I was so tempted just to get onto my knees and roll. And I thought, I can't do this. I'm going to end up putting my recovery back by weeks. But it's not the sort of thing you can just stand there and talk someone through. It's like the old Xbox analogy. If there was you can play UFC on an Xbox controller, but one for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu would have add-ons all the way around it. It's so difficult just to talk it through. You have to be hands-on to teach it. So I completely get that. But with the takedown bit, there's this big, we don't pull guard, we only take down, or we don't take down, we only do a bit of both. I think that's kind of what we would get into on the group chat. Yes, you've got to know how to do both, but it's whatever you feel comfortable doing. Do.
I was very much, and I always have been, since I started teaching, told people that you're not going to pull guard. If you do, you can get out. But the reason why I said that, it wasn't like to be a twat and like say, look, you can't pull guard.
Yeah.
It's to go, right, you have to learn this.
Yeah.
Because it's like the John Danaher saying is like, why ignore 50% of the body when you're talking about leg locks?
Yeah. If
you put jiu-jitsu into a circle of a game, if you don't, when you go into a competition, where do you start? You start standing. If the other person doesn't engage with you, the referee, and you sit on your butt and you pull guard, or you grab a sleeve, you sit down, because that's what you have to do. You can't just sit down on your butt. You have to grab a item of clothing or a sleeve and then pull guard and sit down. If you sit down and they rip that up and they don't engage with you, the referee will stand you back up and you have to go back to standing again. So by learning even just like a small amount of takedowns and become confident in maybe one or two throws or one or two collar drags or whatever it is, then you've got that within your utility belt, within your toolkit.
Totally agree. And a lot of people, I think, especially when they're new to it, when we've both been doing this for a fair while now, right? So when they first come into it and they see someone getting thrown over somebody's shoulder and landed on the floor, they hear the slap on the mat and they see someone flying through the air. They don't really appreciate that hasn't actually hurt, that you're trained how to do that. We don't want to be breaking things when we land, especially on the mats. And the slap we give when we hit the mats, sorry, I should have clapped then. The slap you give when you hit the mats, it's just to take the energy out of the fall. It's not relative to your knee making that noise as it hits the concrete or anything. These are pretty good mats, they're judo mats, jiu-jitsu mats. They're 40 mil?
Yeah, the majority of ones are, yeah.
Yeah, so the chances are you're not going to get hurt. It's not like falling on concrete. It's not like falling on grass. It's a comfortable exit, but you're going to end up. It's going to happen one day. If you don't train for it, it's going to happen. I mean, I did Muay Thai boxing for 30 odd years. My eldest is doing it now. He's absolutely mad for it. And his favourite aspect of it, and mine too, when I was training full time, it was clinching. Get that clinch. Once you've got it and you've got the dominant clinch, the mechanisms of it for that to a takedown are moving your foot 6 inches, but it's not going to physically hurt the person you're training with. It can, if done in an aggressive manner, but even when you're competing, you're not doing it in an aggressive manner. You don't want your opponent on the mats in a competition to not get back up. You want to put them on the floor and then do jiu-jitsu.
I hated takedowns for years.
Yeah.
And it all stemmed from when I was on my PTI course. At the very end of it, we did the close combat instructors course.
Okay.
And at the end of the very first day, so the Monday, it was a 5-day course, so Monday to Friday. At the very end of the day, the last thing we did was we all got into the dojo, and we were told that we were going to do, was it 3 or 4 5-minute rounds, and each round was grappling, and each round, or each, every 5 minutes, there was going to be a fresh new person jump in, and I knew nothing about grappling, like at all. I was one of those guys that thought, I'm not the red mist guy, but I could handle myself a little bit. And then when I started doing this, and I was just being manhandled, I couldn't get off my back, I couldn't get up. I was like, this is horrific. And after the time had finished, I went into, because it was in a squash court, I went into the corner of the squash court, and I pretty much nearly had to turn away and face the wall. Because I was in that much of the clip and the hurt locker, I was nearly crying. It was horrific.
Yeah.
So when I eventually went onto the PT staff, and people were going down to the dojo to grapple and train, I was like, I ain't doing that. You know, it's, excuse the pun, it's gay as fuck. I'm not doing that. I'm not going down there.
Only if you make eye contact.
Yeah. I'm not going down there to cuddle other men. Yeah. But then, you know, when I was in another job working in another gym, I had an Olympic and Commonwealth champion judoka turn up, who wanted to start training. Yeah, he was triple my size and body weight, but he wanted to train. And then a guy who was a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, but a second dan black belt in judo, said, you know, can we teach some sessions? And I bought the kit and equipment, and it's pretty much where it kind of.
And you've been hooked ever since.
Started. I wouldn't say I was hooked. No, like not at all. And people that have asked me that, you know, previously, I started doing jiu-jitsu purely for the fact that it was something different to do from going to the gym and doing the same gym routine, and when the waves were poor, to go surfing. So that's primarily why I started, and I started doing it once a week. And then when I was at home, I went to Exeter and trained at Exeter BJJ. So I was like then training like once or twice a week. And then the more I did, became a blue belt. I just started training a little bit more. I started teaching, like and making dojos to each of the gyms I was working in. So then it went from training like once a week to training, you know, 3 or 4 times a week, because I was teaching on a Tuesday and a Thursday on camp where I was working, as well as going to my actual, you know, training sessions in the evening. And it just kind of went from there. It was never, I never purposefully kind of was like, I'm going to be, you know, this is my thing. You know, this is my jam. I just kind of went with it. And now I own my own gym and I'm a black belt. So
turns out you are. It is your thing.
It is my thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And you love it. And you've done so well. I mean, I didn't intend to get into jiu-jitsu at all. I mean, I had a crazy kind of path into jiu-jitsu. Like when I had my beach calf, I got hit by a lorry, and I ended up having to have back surgery. Couldn't use my legs properly for a good 18 months, and everything I did, I was in absolute pain. But I was still eating as if I was up at 5 a.m, diving all day, training in the evenings, going to bed at 1, back up again. And so I just ballooned up in weight, and I had non-stop pain in my legs and my back. As soon as it took about 3 or 4 years, and the doctor sent me for an MRI and had back surgery to sort my lower back out. Within 18 months, I went up to a 56-inch waist, so I got pretty big. So within 6 weeks of the surgery, I was like, I've got to go training again. And I went straight back to Thai boxing, and I started going from a 56-inch waist down to a 32-inch waist. I dropped 45 kilos in weight, which was phenomenal, and I was so happy with it. But my mobility, I wanted to see how far I could push my mobility. And then randomly at our Thai boxing gym, our head coach said, we've got Gracie Barra Cornwall, Rafael dos Santos coming in. Does anybody fancy trying out Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? I thought, well, what better way to try out your mobility than to give that a go? I'd done some traditional jiu-jitsu in the past, but nothing to the sort of level that we're looking at. And like Raf, he's 4 times world champion, no-gi, former Brazilian Olympic judo team, and he knows his stuff. And I expected this giant of a man to walk in a room, sort of 6'6", chiseled. He's absolutely chiseled, but he's about 5 foot, and he had a real way about him, about just walking in, putting you completely at ease and saying, right, we're just going to have a little roll around, we're going to do some basic stuff, and we're going to see what you think. And I loved it. I mean, because I guess for me, it was the first time I could actually freely roll around again, like just and have pain-free movement. But I knew that it was now more than a stand-up game, and that there was something to this. And that was 14 years ago-ish. And I started in Cornwall because that's where I was, and came to Exeter, started training with Exeter and yourself. And yeah, I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. There's something almost, well, for me personally, having had so many injuries and so many surgeries, it's something very freeing about it that I can do that now. And if I can't figure it out, there again, in this sport, there's very few egos. If there are, they don't last very long. And everybody's willing to help everybody. And I love that mentality of it. I think it's more the mentality of the people that you train with, which appears to be a global thing, rather than just the sport itself. Yes, physically demanding. Yes, makes you think. It's chess with people. Murder yoga, as Genki calls it. I think that's a brilliant analogy for it. But it's also the support network of the people that are there. They'll stop. They'll take their time. They'll help you. And you don't get that in many other sports.
No, and there's not many other sports either that you can just go to a gym and you can train with world champions.
Yeah, I know, right?
It's weird.
It's really weird. I mean, look at the quality of people that you and I train with. I mean, we've got European champions, people who've gone to Vegas to train and compete in the world championships. I mean, it's a really high caliber.
I mean, I went and watched the Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz fight in Madison Square Garden at 2019.
Yeah.
And I went and trained at Henzo's for a little bit because a friend of a friend basically was the striking coach there for MMA. And I went and did a couple of sessions there, and because the fight was going on, you had loads of the UFC fighters were there. There was Gordon Ryan was there, Gary Tonin was there, his missus, John Danaher was teaching the class.
I mean, for non-jiu-jitsu listeners, that's like Ronaldo walking into the room
and
teaching how to play football.
And all these world class people, not just from the MMA fraternity, but also the jiu-jitsu side of things. Like Buchecha was there, and a couple of other guys, and just being on the mat and just drilling with these guys and training with them and rolling with them afterwards is going to your local park where your local football team practices, and Ronaldo or I don't know anybody about football, but having
Madonna, Maradona,
Ronaldo, and all these types of people, just coming down to have a kickabout.
Yeah,
when that's never going to happen.
It's bizarre. I mean, so I used to train up in Bristol quite a lot because I was working there 3 days a week, and I was training with Bristol Gracie Baha, Giza, who's the owner and coach, really lovely bloke. But he had Roger Gracie come along and do a seminar, and he said, "Look, come along. You're more than welcome to come along." This guy's 5-6 times UFC world champion. God knows how many times world champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he is a giant. He's well over 6 foot. And about 6 foot broad as well. And I'm actually getting to roll with this guy. And there's not, again, it's like football, I guess. You're having a kickabout with Ronaldo. But Ronaldo's got hands the size of a bear's paw. And he's saying, "Oh, that's really good." That's as he's submitting you. You did really well. But it was amazing. And you get that caliber. And anybody can do that. And you can go and book a private session with Roger Gracie or his dad. You don't get to do that in any other sport, as far as I'm aware. Even in boxing, I don't think you could book a private session up with Tyson without spending a lot of money. But in this, you can. People are approachable, and they remember you. So the next seminar, they go, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" They're just nice people.
Yeah. I think one of the hardest things about jiu-jitsu really is... Again, there's this debate, isn't there, about what's the hardest belt to get and all that sort of thing. But I think one of the hardest things for people to do really is to walk through a door on your own and go, I'm gonna start a hobby or whatever, which involves wrestling other people, trying to pin them down, trying to snap their arms, their legs, and strangle them. And it's quite intimidating. And you do, and it's not easy. it is hard. It's hard work, but it's also very rewarding. I would say the first 18 months of starting jiu-jitsu, you're just a punch bag for other people. But out of that, you have to be a special kind of weird to keep coming back to try and get better at it. And I remember rolling with lots of different people, and each time my mentality was, I can always tell this story. When I first started at Exeter, Johnny Gurr, submitted me about 12 times in 5 minutes. And I was like, right, for me to improve now, I need to roll with him again. But this time, he only submits me 11 times, then 10 times. And then it gets to the point where he's not submitting me anymore. I'm just surviving on the bottom.
So there's a really good example of a local grappler who is an absolute gent of a human being who fought at a really high level as well. I mean, not a lot of people know that about Johnny Gurr. I mean, he's an awesome former competitive fighter, but he's really humble with it. He wants to help people get better so he can have a harder role with them to the point where he can't beat them anymore. So he wants to help encourage you. But trying to convince someone to come in and do that again and again and again. And we wrap up in spandex 3 or 4 times a week with heavy set pajamas for a sweaty struggle snuggle with a bunch of friends on the floor. That does sound gay, but it's not. It's learning how to not lose but learn. And it's getting that mentality. And the thing I really love about it is finding the right kind of crazy, finding the right kind of people that are going to support you to do that. But you can take that mentality and you can apply that to your everyday life, right? So you get submitted 12 times by Johnny in the first session. You didn't give up. You came back with a washed gi, and he submitted you 11 times. And you didn't give up. Next time it was 10 times, 9 times, 8 times, but you didn't give up. You kept coming back. And it's that mentality of, I haven't lost. Johnny's not going to come in and try and threaten me or bully me next time we go for a roll. He's like, hey, do you want to do that again? Did you try this technique? If you try this time, it might mean that it slows me down a bit more. He's actively trying to make you harder to work with and roll with. I love that mentality about this. You find it in no other sport, in my humble opinion.
Without kind of going off on a massive tangent with life skills and all that sort of thing, but there are a lot of memes and sayings and stuff out there about jiu-jitsu. But I would say that any sport that's hard on the body, and you keep going back for more when you're hurting, gives you resilience.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And your grit and determination to keep going and improve in something that is that hard. At the end of the day, jiu-jitsu is a skill. Like we keep using football as the analogy, but any sport that involves, to get to a really good level, you have to accumulate enough time and practice and hours to assimilate that skill to a high level. Now, how does that work? Well, you have to show up. You have to be consistent. And if you're not consistent with something, and again, let's use this analogy with life as well. If you don't wake up in the morning and you don't have a shower and you don't make your bed and you don't make everything nice and tidy before you go out and do whatever you're doing, whether it's to work or whatever, and everything's very intermittent and all over the place, then those kind of set traits and patterns that you set for yourself don't create a standard for you to mentally be able to deal with things. Now I've always called surfing and jiu-jitsu anchors. They are my mental anchors. If I didn't do them, I don't know where I would be in that mental capacity or that in that mental space from the things that I've seen and done in my life. However, without using me as the example, I think everybody who trains jiu-jitsu or has an anchor like that can attest to the fact that once or twice or 3 or 4 times a week where you're able to just escape, your thoughts and be distracted by it is really good for like your mental well-being as well. And to kind of like incorporate that a little bit more with being in a physically active sport like jiu-jitsu is, the majority of people that turn up and start sometimes, don't use the excuse that I'm not fit enough or I need to lose weight first. There's lots of classic cliches of people giving excuses not to start something. But if they just turn up and do it, you are going to get fitter, you're going to get stronger, you're going to lose weight, you're going to start looking at like your nutrition and your diet because you want to maintain consistency on the mat.
100% agree. When I started doing jiu-jitsu, I was 125 kilos, and within a matter of months I was down to 100, then 90, then I think I got down to about 82, and it was just how far can I take this? What can I do next? Completely cleaned up my nutrition, completely cleaned up every other aspect of my life as well, and it just helped me focus. But you tend to get quite a lot of crossover between jiu-jitsu and with other sports like surfing and climbing. Like climbers and surfers are, I don't know what it is, there seems to be quite a few of them that come and train over the years. Climbers' strength is second to none. The grip strength, the way they can casually, calmly think about getting their hand to another position or their leg to another position. They do it all the time, I guess, when they're climbing, bouldering or whatever. But that mentality really does have a good overlap with jiu-jitsu. So it's not like we don't just train jiu-jitsu. Like you surf, you do God knows how many other sports along with it as well. I've been walking along with the kids on Exmouth and seen you skating along quite happily, just big smile on your face, cruising down the promenade bit. So there's a lot of overlap. We don't just train jiu-jitsu. I can't just train jiu-jitsu. I have to lift weights so that my joints don't give up on me. I have to. Hikers, climbers, surfers in particular. There just seems to be this bizarre little overlap community.
Yeah, the crossover is great. But what I've also started doing now is now I achieved the Grand Master of Black Belt in Jiu-Jitsu. Is I've got judo that's happening on a Saturday within my gym, and I've started doing that. And
how are you finding that?
I enjoy it. I enjoy it greatly. It's something different to think about. And I've tried, and it's funny because when I do the session we do on the Saturday is 2 hours long, and it incorporates just like a bit of drilling. Then we do some groundwork and stuff. You'll like this. The first bit of groundwork we did, like in jiu-jitsu, it's frowned upon to start on your knees.
Yeah.
So we started on our knees, and I was with, I can't remember her name, so forgive me. I was with this girl, and it's from, like I say, the guys that come down on a Saturday and train, they're also from Exeter University Judo Association.
Okay.
A couple of my students are the coaches there. And anyway, this girl, we bowed, and then she just come over and fucking clotheslined me in the head. And I was like that. I was just like, she hit me in the head with a bicep. So like, proper forearm smashed me to the deck. And I was like, that fuck. Yeah. It's like, this is how it's going to be, is it? And I like that, it's great. And I've tried to, when we do the groundwork as well, I'm not just doing jiu-jitsu. I'm kind of trying to incorporate the judo mindset. So like holding your collars, lying flat prone on the floor, and not letting people turn you and stuff like that. Again, the two guys that teach, Mick and Matt. Mick's been training judo for 60 years, I think he said.
Wow.
He started when he was really young. And Matt, his son, is a brown belt, and he teaches as well. And when they lie flat on the floor, they can be really difficult just to turn over. Easy to put your hooks in and take the back, but like people that haven't really know too much about jiu-jitsu find them really difficult to roll with and train with because they're so awkward. And I found that over the years with people that train judo is that they can be very, very awkward because they understand the nawaza, they understand the ground game a little bit more than like somebody who's trained jiu-jitsu, but not to the extent.
That's interesting to hear.
Yeah,
that's really interesting to hear.
It is really strange, and I think if you translate that a little bit, when you've got a new guy that comes through the door and doesn't fucking know anything, it can be really difficult sometimes to control them. There's a guy who used to play for England rugby union called Tom Johnson, and he came to a couple of my jiu-jitsu sessions when I was in the other place. He's like 6'4", built like a brick shit house. He's personal trainer now, but really, really health and mental health advocate. And went to spar with him, and he's just like fucking bench pressing me all over the place, like throwing me just to hold on to him. Was like the game really. But the flip side of that, give him 2 to 3 years training, that he won't be that awkward anymore. He will play the game.
No, I completely get that. Completely get it. We get the same with the police guys. The one thing that kind of shocked me when I first started training with them, and I don't know why it shocked me, because these guys and gals handle people every single day for a living. They are really, really used to it. So to grapple with them is quite interesting. Now, if you also take some of their tag team guys and their riot people, they're built like chiefs, and they don't look it when they've got all their clobber on, but you get them into the gym, they are built like like a pro rugby player. Not so much the women. I will give them credit. They are incredibly strong, and they're actually more aggressive than the guys, but they're used to handling people, but they're used to handling people in a certain way. So like you said, as soon as you get that knowledge of how to manipulate or to use someone else's strength against them, it makes it very easy. It's very frustrating for them though. This is the sort of stuff that works on someone who's not trained. It doesn't work on somebody who is trained. So like, again, both of us would be in here with a couple of their white belts from the police who are stacked. It's not the strength that's going to make them win that competition. It's the knowledge they got behind it. Judo-wise, I did one judo session when I was probably about 10. I walked in. I couldn't even say I did the warm-up, and as part of the warm-up, they started doing throws, and this 12-year-old kid threw another 12-year-old kid, and he snapped his thumb there and then. I was like, nah, I'm out. So, can we go home, please, Daddy? And that was me. That put me off it completely. I just kept to stand-up stuff like karate, taekwondo, Thai boxing. And it wasn't until I started getting back into jiu-jitsu or got into jiu-jitsu properly that I really appreciate that. I wish that I'd stuck with judo at a young age, just to learn how to do the takedowns properly, like we were saying earlier on, right? So if I'd learned it at a younger age, the anxiety of doing it as you get older, being more worried about how you're going to land and that slapping noise when you hit the ground, that would have all been gotten rid of when I was a kid. And I wish I did judo for that reason. Absolutely would. But again, you're never too old to learn, right? So for me to get better at jiu-jitsu, I've got to spend more time on a stand-up game. I completely get that.
No, I really enjoyed judo, and I've appreciated it a little bit more. I used to be quite complacent with it.
Yeah.
And it's just a different form of doing something. You know, jiu-jitsu incorporates lots of different styles. You know, sambo incorporates wrestling, incorporates MMA, judo. You know, any other like sport that involves taking somebody down and getting them to the ground. And but it's hard. And again, it's another one of those sports where you have to be quite an aggressive person to get anything. I was training, not this weekend, the weekend before we were training here. I'm a white belt again, so it's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
But it's a white belt that knows how to throw people. So I was training with a couple of the red belts, and I'm not like slagging them off or anything like that. But they just, because they've started doing judo, and hats off to them, they've started doing something. They haven't quite got the aggression of it yet. So they're trying to do these different techniques, but they're going through the motion of, right, I'm going to do a throw. But if I don't want you to throw me, then I'm not going to let you throw me.
Yeah, no.
So unless you do it aggressively and hard and put me in a spot where you're dragging my body weight up onto my toes and throwing me over your hips or whatever it is, or tripping me, is that you're never really going to get that.
So I think that's another important thing to keep in mind, that these are combat sports. And the idea of combat sports, in my mind, it's always my turn. It's always my turn. So if you're sparring, unless I'm helping you train and I want you to get better, if it's sparring time and it's someone of equal level to you, it's always my turn. So I'm not waiting for you to get a position before I do something. I'm grabbing you, I'm taking you to the ground, and I'm going to try and submit you. And you should be of the same mindset. And if you're not, that's going to affect my training. So have that mindset. You're not trying to kill each other. You're not trying to break a limb or break each other's noses. You're just trying to train. And I can't train. If I like when I used to compete, when I was training with Raf, like we'd compete all the time. But it was very much that mentality: work together, train hard, fight easy. And that's why we did so well, to be quite honest with you. And that's why we got the bug, because it's a community of us training constantly. But so many people, you do see this, no matter what you train in, turn up, do the class, and it's, oh, sorry, did I hurt you? No, I'm sorry. It's a combat sport, Don't be afraid.
That's one of those things I have to keep saying to people, is I keep saying, stop fucking saying sorry. Why are you saying sorry? Sorry, did I hurt you?
Yeah.
Well, that's the fucking point. It's the point. The point of this is to, throw you to the ground so it hurts. It's to, manipulate your shoulder joints and your elbows and your knees and your ankles.
Yeah, you can't imagine Tyson saying sorry in between each punch, can you?
Yeah.
Sorry. That would be funny to watch.
Absolutely fucking blasting you through the ropes. Sorry, mate. You all right? Yeah.
Yeah, no. It's like when you roll with Dean, like another one of the guys that we train with. Like, he'll go onto knee on belly with me, grab my head, pull me out and go, "You right, sausage?" But we'll have a laugh and a joke with it. We're not trying to hurt each other, we're going to submit each other. And we've got this golden rule for those who don't know. If it hurts, you tap and it stops, and you have a laugh and a joke, and where did I go wrong there? How can I do that better? I've asked that to you how many times? How did you catch me there? Show me again. And I've asked you to show me how you catch me. It didn't help the next time, but I was at least I knew why you were catching me and why it was hurting.
One of the people that I've followed throughout, and I kind of idolise a little bit. I trained with him when I was blue belt, maybe. It was Chris Hoyter.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I love the guy to bits. He's great. He's just kind of whole mentality of it, and he started. He's one of the original Dirty Dozen, and trained with Hickson and all the Gracies and stuff when they came over to America. And I kind of love his analogy of how he looks at jiu-jitsu. Think street, think the sport, and that's kind of what I've been doing over the last year, and explaining to people about the competition point system for jiu-jitsu is the way it is, because it's how you would beat somebody in a street fight. You throw somebody to the ground, 2 points. Past the legs, 2 points. Don't get anything for side control. Get 4 points for mount. Of course you do, because once you're in the mount and you secure it, you can punch the shit out of somebody's head. Elbows, headbutts, punches, brilliant. Taking the back, 4 points.
And rightfully so.
Because everybody, like our whole biomechanics is facing forward.
Facing forward, yeah.
So if you take their back, you know, you're choking, you're manipulating elbows and joints and stuff like that, if you know how to do that sort of stuff. But rear naked choke in the back position is like, you know, the king of submissions, right?
Yeah. It's like everybody's heard of it. Most people give it a go. The majority of people who don't know how to do it will at least cross their legs and allow the practitioner who knows what he's looking for to submit the person on the back. But just because you're in one position doesn't mean to say you can't get out of it, right? And that's the whole point, is you're not just because someone's got your back doesn't mean you're going to stay there. Doesn't mean to say you're not going to try and fight your way out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't go down the whole line of like self-defense, because I think there's too much variety, or spider legs, spider webs that come off the jiu-jitsu track as it is. You know, we talked about, you know, the takedowns, the leg locks, the Barambola roly-poly stuff. You know, the fundamentals that people just miss because they want to go and do all the cool stuff.
That's what I really like about Roger Gracie, is he doesn't do any of the flashy, spinny around, rolly round stuff. He just does the basics really, really well. And I love that, because he's a big guy, so I can get on board with that. I'm quite a big set guy myself. But he'll just avoid, like, you see all the even Nate Diaz to a point, he'll absolutely worm his way around and roll around to get people. But he doesn't. He'll just take his time, methodically approach it and submit. And he's got the track record to prove that the basics work. And I love that. Just get the basic stuff right.
You've took a little bit of time out of training recently. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, no, sure. I mean, so what we're in March now, March the 18th. So on December the 18th, I was diagnosed with bowel cancer. I wasn't feeling right for the best part of a year or so before that. Brain fog, losing my strength. I was gassing out in training to people that I should be walking all over, and it was really frustrating me. And my GP kept telling me it was stress. I had a particularly stressful end of 23, all of 24. So I thought, right, I can get on board with that. So October came along. I got a text message from my GP surgery. You've got a new GP. Do you want to book an appointment? Yes, I do. And Constance Fernley is her name. She's absolutely saved my life, hands down. She said, I don't believe it's stress. I'm going to just get all the bloods done for you. We're going to do some samples of some other bits, and we'll go for it. We'll see what's going on. Within 3 days, she rang me back up and said, right, I don't want you doing anything strenuous, stressful, no long drives. We found that you've got anemia. So you've got a bleed somewhere inside your body. We need to find out what that bleed is. So we're going to send you for an endoscopy. So an endoscopy is a camera being inserted down your throat and one up the other end. They don't do them at the same time. So you can take all the wonderful marine analogies about being double-ended by NHS and out the way.
I would never say something like that.
Of course you wouldn't. And they have more than one camera, so there's no funny aftertaste. So, which is helpful, right? I did it with gas and air. If you've ever got to have one, don't do it with gas and air. Get them to put you out. It was the most bizarre, uncomfortable experience I've had. But they did the camera down the throat, right into your stomach, and it's great because you can watch the monitor, and I now know myself inside out and backwards, I guess. Nothing was found there, but they went up the other end, and sorry mate, yep. They did the examination with the camera from the other end. It's a tiny camera, so don't think it's like a Canon EOS they're going to try and shove up there. It's a fibre optic bit of kit with a claw on the end of it, so they can do biopsies. When they go in, they say it's quite funny because when they get to your left hand side, just above your hip, they say on everybody it feels uncomfortable. It's like this really weird bend, and they've got to push this camera through. I wasn't aware that all of us have about 23 to 25 feet of bowel. I mean, I'm bad enough packing a suitcase to go on holiday. I mean, I have difficulty repacking it. So I was thinking, how do they put you back together again? There's spares. So they put this camera up and have a look, and they came across something, and it was a 2 centimeter long polyp. Now, polyps like imagine what a Tic Tac looked like, but just inflated to 2 centimeters. And it was the doctor was like adamant. He said, "Look, we know what this is. We're going to take a biopsy, but we can tell you with some certainty that this is cancerous. So you have bowel cancer." So they took the samples. They didn't say that with the camera up your backside. They wait till you get out and you come off the gas and air before they drop that little nugget on you. And they did it in such a good, calm, caring, understanding way. I mean, that's what they do for a living, right? They don't just say, right, yeah, you got cancer, see you in 2 weeks. They sit down and explain it to you. They tell you what else it could be and what other tests you've got coming up. I was quite fortunate in some respects that it could not have been anything else. That was it. Now we know what we've got to deal with. Let's get on and deal with it. And I had to do this in Tiverton. So I live in Exeter. I had to drive half an hour to Tiverton, got over the gas and air, sat in my car and thought, fuck, just been told you got cancer. So you do. You get the tear, it comes out your eye. You wonder how you're going to deliver that news to your children. And that was the only difficult part of the whole process for me, was figuring out how am I going to tell my children. And your head can go one of two ways. You can either go really dark, or you can give it a bit of a wobble and go, this isn't a death sentence. I can get over this. I can beat this. It's a 2 centimeter cancerous tumor. I've got this. I then got booked in for a CT scan. And the CT scan showed very clearly it was 100% cancer, but it also showed a shadow in my liver. So they now had to be really honest with me and say there's a chance of a secondary cancer. So none of the blood tests said that was the case. They did my liver function tests, all came back as fine. So they were to order me an MRI scan. Now, I'm now thinking, great, so now potentially I've got cancer in my liver as well as my bowel. Let's just hope it's not in my lymph nodes or anything else. So they did every test you could possibly imagine. The NHS were fantastic. Now, this is within 6 weeks, so Christmas has happened as well. The world closes for a fortnight over Christmas, and I'm in for scans in January. So I was really impressed at this. And luckily for me, the MRI showed the patch in my liver was either like a fatty deposit or a cyst or something that we've all got. So don't worry about that. It's just in your bowel. So they booked me in for surgery for the 13th of February. I went in the morning at 7:30 in the morning, and by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I was coming to being offered a cup of tea. And that was it. They just cut it out. They made... there's two ways they can do the surgery. One involves quite a large incision. My cancer was on my right-hand side of my body. So I showed you the scar earlier on. And I'm 4.5 weeks out of surgery. They don't look like big scars. So I've got one from the belly button, one just under my stomach, one over here and one over here. And they basically put the arms in and the cameras in to get a better view of it. And then one in the middle goes in, cuts out the section of bowel and everything around it, and then removes it. And they removed 35 centimeters of my bowel, which to me sounds like quite a lot of bits. But when you've got 23 feet of it, I don't really think it's that bad. And then they replumb you. And it's literally 2 pipes, boom, plumb back together again, stitched up, patch them up. Let's just make sure it doesn't leak. So for, I think it's the first 6 weeks after surgery, you can't have a very fibrous diet, because pushing water through a pipe that's got a leak in it, it can leak out the bits. So they want it to be as solid as possible going through the pipes. So I'm on a tragically high carb diet. I was saying to you earlier on, the yes and no lists that I've got for what you can eat is no, basically vegetables, no green veg, no broccoli, no salad, no peas, no fibrous, nothing but seeds, no nuts. And on the yes list, chips, crisps, potatoes, meat. It sounded, I've got this, like, this is great. I can just have a really cool, I'll go have fish and chips every day, not a problem. 4.5 weeks later, I'm looking at broccoli, just thinking, oh, I can make a beautiful soup out of that. I can't wait to have that. So that changes again soon. And in another 5 to 6 weeks, I can get back on the mats. There's no point in trying to push my recovery. 2 days after surgery, I was walking 200 or 300 yards up and down the ward, which they were really stoked about. They thought, this is, you're doing everything you should do, getting up and being active. Yesterday I had a 10-mile walk. Within 3 hours of surgery, I was back to work. I was on the phone doing emails. I felt fine, absolutely fine. But and then 3 weeks ago now, so 2 weeks after surgery, I got told that there's all the biopsy results have come back in. They can't tell it on a microscopic level, but I'm clear of cancer, so it's gone. They're going to check me now every 6 months for the next 3 years. So that's CT scans, blood works, endoscopies for the next 3 years. And then for 2 years after that, it goes from being every 6 months to once a year until end of 5 years. It's completely all gone. Something could flare up in that 5 years, but with the amount of checks I'm getting, it would be early, done, in, out, away you go. But from diagnosis to being told that was 11 weeks. So I think I actually sat down with my sister, and because she went through breast cancer during COVID, so she had to go through all the chemo, all the radiotherapy, you name it, she had it. And I said, I've had the man flu of cancer. Being told you haven't got it anymore kind of made my mind absorb for the first time the diagnosis. Everything happened so fast, I didn't have the chance for it to be fully absorbed in my mind. And whilst I was in hospital, and we'd had that conversation, I was looking around the ward for the first real time. You have a chat cursory with people, and a couple of days later they're in the curtains back and you can talk to everybody else who's on the ward. I was not the youngest person there. I'm 46, and I was told I'm quite young to have this. There was a guy, mid-30s, who had, like I said to you earlier on, he had his bladder removed, had a stoma bag fitted. And then there was a guy in the ward next to us who was in his mid-20s. I mean, same sort of thing. This is what this ward's for, is abdominal and bowel issue. But they were cancer patients as well. So it doesn't really matter what age you are, you can get it. Whether you're 60, 50, 60, 70, doesn't matter, or 20, 30, 40s, it's a thing. The thing to be aware of is listening to your body, and if you don't feel right, going and getting that checked out. And I can't stress that bit enough. I didn't think, when I got told I had bowel cancer, I went and Googled the symptoms for bowel cancer. I presented with none of the symptoms for bowel cancer. I wasn't passing blood, front or back. There was none of that. None of the other symptoms around it, stomach pains, issues, cramping, none of it at all. I was losing strength, and I lost in total. They did a measurement, crikey, probably about 18 months before I was diagnosed. We did like a measurement of muscle mass, because I said I was getting weaker, and it was double checks pre-surgery. I've lost about 20% of my muscle mass. So I was getting weaker. It's just nobody could tell me why I was getting weaker. And it turns out it was because of the anemia, but the cancer itself, and everything was just eating away at my body. So plus side is I now know why I was gassing out all the time, why I was weak. But now also, how can I adjust to that? I'm still going to have the anemia. The anemia is going to be around with me for another 6 months at least. Iron replacement tablets. It's like flipping a light switch out. I cannot tell you the difference that made. Without it, I had like chest pains. It was really difficult to wake up in the morning. going to sleep was an absolute nightmare. It just couldn't happen. I just literally turned to drink most nights just to try and get myself to the point where I could go to sleep. Walking for 10, 15 miles so I was tired enough, and training, and I couldn't do it. 3 days, iron replacement tablets. I was getting 8 hours sleep, 9 hours sleep a night. Again, no chest pains. So I had chest pains and tingling up and down my arms, right? To me, that says heart attack. That doesn't say bowel cancer. But it was the anemia. And I'm just amazed how something like that can affect your body in that way. But none of my symptoms pointed towards bowel cancer. So hats off to my GP for that. She was on the money getting all the tests done. And now all I've got to do is sit and wait, really, and eat chips.
It can't be bad, really. There's always a prof to something, right?
Mate, honestly, there's only so many carbs you can have. If I have to have pasta linguine one more time.
Yeah, it does sound like a bit of a dream, doesn't it? It's almost like keto, but without the pasta.
Oh, yeah.
And the potatoes.
And the potatoes and anything nice.
And anything else. So it's just like eggs and potatoes. Yeah, pretty much. Mate, that sounds like super savage, but also on the flip side of it, I think everybody deep down, like, you know, coming from a personal perspective, there's a couple of not biggest fears, because I don't really think about them that much, is that I did a few courses in mental health because I want to recognise any PTSD or any mental health changes to me from the things that I've seen and I've done, I mentioned earlier. And the other thing is as well is like what you're saying there, you know, of do I feel ill? Do I feel like, you know, have I got brain fog? How do I feel different? How would I know if I've, you know, got cancer? And, you know, I'm one of them weird ones that every time I go for a shit, I have a look down the toilet to make sure there's no blood in it. Checking my nuts every single night, not just because I'm having a wank, but, you know, but checking, you know, all the time. And I'm not doing it from a hypochondriac sort of like way. It's just kind of trying to be a little bit aware of a little bit more aware of your body.
Well, not just that, mate. We spend more time worrying about if our car's got enough oil in it, or if it's just got the right amount of tread on the tyres, is there enough air in the tyres, than we do about our own bodies. So we listen to our car, right? Sometimes you turn the radio up a little bit too much so you can get rid of that tapping, because that's been there for a while, right? You shouldn't do that to your body. If you hear that tapping, turn the fucking volume down, go and see a mechanic, because they know about it. But that's what they're there for. That's why we have doctors. That's why we have car mechanics, you know. The difference between your car is that costs money to fix and get fault finding. The difference we have, and luckily here in the UK, that doesn't cost us money. It's just time. Take the time for you. Go and get yourself checked, no matter what it is. And you should be checking your nuts. You should be having a good old feel and letting know. And at some point, every man's looked down the toilet and thought, is that a world record breaker? But you should be having a look. Is there blood in it? If there is, there's only one phone call to make. And that's to a friend, to let them know that you've got something going on. So, because you need a support structure for this. I don't care who you are, you need a support structure for it. Whether you think you have one or not, a WhatsApp message to the person who sends you those ropey gifts every day, or the memes, they will 100% support you through it. And I'm really fortunate with my friend circle that I've got. And then to the doctor. Make sure you got support. Go and see a doctor. If it's nothing, that person can then take the mickey out of you for wasting their time. That's cool. That's exactly what you would do to them as well, right? But if it's something, that's the first person that's going to say, right, let's give your head a wobble. It's not a death sentence. We're going to go on and we're going to beat this.
Mate, on that note, it's been absolutely fantastic talking to you.
Likewise, mate. Thank you.
And thanks for coming on the podcast. And hope to see that brown belt of yours on the mat soon.
It will be. It'll be the one getting beaten up by all the white belts and blue belts for the next 6 months.
Getting whipped.
Getting whipped. Yes. In every way.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
And that's it. If you like the podcast, please like, share and subscribe on your podcast provider, and also leave us a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening.